Good evening, everyone, and a bright good morning to those of you east of the Atlantic Ocean. So, onegaishimasu. This evening, I'd like to read you Shokushu number 19, Willpower. The focused willpower penetrates, let me make sure this is loud enough. The focused willpower penetrates even stone. This naturally arising state of mind silences even the storm and thunder. Where does this state of mind come from? The person who accomplishes important tasks understands this power from experience. When we calm the waves of our mind, from molecules to atoms to electrons, we experience our great willpower, which is universal willpower. So this particular shokushu is referring directly to this saying of Toi Sensei and vice versa. Toi Sensei says, if you use your willpower in accord with the universal principles, this will become your reality. Okay, Sayaka, would you please read that in Japanese for us?
天地の理に従い、念を起こせば必ず実在になる。
Thank you very much. So, okay, so when Toi Sensei says universal principle, singular, he always meant mind leads body. Okay? But when he says universal principles, plural, he's always referring to the three principles of the universe. So the universe is an infinite radius, infinite sphere with an infinite radius. Number one, and number two, the universe is an infinite gathering of infinitely small particles. And number three, of course, it's always changing. So some people think like Chuchuo crocodile, this kind of thing, or plural compared to singular, let's say, that these are different things, that he's referring to different things. But it doesn't matter. Even all the five principles, the 20 plus five principles that he gave us, all of these refer to or point to the same singular thing, which is, of course, mind-body unification. Or in other words, following the way of the universe. Okay, let's do a little key breathing. So, in the beginning, we are quite immature. So we may practice with sincerity in the dojo. We're given etiquette to follow. We're told what to do in every moment. We're given forms to learn, and we concentrate our mind on those forms. Some of them being physical and some of them being mental, but all of them being forms that we have to adhere to. And we're very good at doing that while we're in the dojo or while we're in front of the teacher. But then when we leave the dojo, we're through with that and we can have a party. So this is, we're all the same. This is when we're immature. What Torsten said, this is a very advanced state, of course, he's talking about. We have Kaisho, Gyosho, Sosho. So in the Kaisho stage is what I'm talking about. You're just following the form very, very carefully, very self-consciously. You're not really There's no real loving of the form. There's no real surrender to the form. There's no real deep appreciation of how that might change the way you see the world. But then in Gyosho, the second stage, in Aikido, we say, well, the second stage is form. There's still form there that you're following carefully. But there's also key movement. So when we're talking about living our life, and the same thing is true. We have a form to follow, but we're also finding some key movement in our practice. In other words, there's some inspiration that's beginning to inform the form of our practice. It's beginning to move into the form of our practice. So we're being informed on a very subtle level. And so this is the middle level of maturity. And not until you reach social, the advanced level of maturity, are you able to just leave the form alone. You don't really throw it away because it never goes anywhere. It's always available and always being used, but not self-consciously being used. It's automatically a part of us. So we can spend all of our attention on changing the way that we view the world, changing the way that we interact with the world. And this is what this phrase is about. This is what he's talking about. This is when we discover the real willpower. When we're following, if we feel that we're following the way of the universe, then that means that we never judge a moment or any action or any activity to be wrong because we're following the universe. The universe is acting. The universe is at large. The universe is running things. It's what's happening. And every single moment is to awaken us, to enlighten us about ourselves, to help us understand on a deeper level exactly how we have been conditioned and how a change in that condition might alter the way that we interact with the world. So that becomes our practice. That's advanced practice. That's Kaisho, Gyosho, Sosho. That's social practice. And we like to call it Shugyo practice because it really is bringing all of our attention to the moment. And no matter what Keiko practice we're still doing, learning about some art or studying about some principle, that still exists. It still goes on because knowledge is infinite. The knowledge of form is infinite. There's no end to it. But we are either in Shugyo or not. In other words, we can focus completely on perfecting the form while at the same time be resting completely in Shugyo. In other words, our attention is completely present without distraction or without any need for correction or clarification. Even though that's constantly going on, we don't require it. We just listen. When it comes, welcome. So, this is Toi Sensei at his ultimate. This is Toi Sensei telling us this is how somebody lives when they're following the way of the universe, when they're following these universal principles. I want you to think about or discuss in your classes without me telling you about it. How are those three principles of the universe activated in our lives? In other words, how do they fit with what I'm talking about? With Shugyo, this infinity of extension and infinity infinity of intention. How does that, and all this constant state of change, how does that inform us? And how does our willpower allow us to capture this and live with it? Okay, so are we all here? Group number one.
Good evening, Sensei. It's
Good
Olaf
morning.
again. I was in group one with Vitali, Gloria, and Kayumi.
Uh-huh.
And we had a very interesting discussion, touching several topics, actually. I'm trying to recap a little bit. So we were talking about body and health also, and how through training Ki Aikido, you become kind of more sensitive and you start to notice the things you eat and drink, that you which things are good for you and not. You become sensitive to your feedback from your body, what is good to put into you and what not. So you kind of become more sensitive and feel right away, okay, no, I shouldn't eat this, that doesn't feel good. So even on the body level, you feel you can train yourself, basically, not actually train, but it's kind of coming through our training. This sensitivity also applies to the body. So that was one topic. And then another one was even in fairy tales for children, there are examples of when someone in that fairy tale really has a strong will. I want this, no matter what everybody else thinks. And then he tries to go this way. Then in the end of the fairy tale, you see that it doesn't work out for him. So this kind of wisdom is also sometimes in fairy tales. That was one topic that we talked about. But I think the most important topic was, and the overall topic, when we feel the principles of the universe and go, like we like to say in Ki Aikido, feel the movement of the ki of the universe and try to go with this ki movement, then what we do seems to work out. But when we use our willpower in a different way, like in Aikido, the ki moves this way, but I want to go this way, then we feel there's also an outcome. So it will also affect my reality, but not the way I think it will, because there will be tension and there will be fighting. And I see that the results are not what they should be. So when we move with the ki of the universe, or with the ki that is presented to us from our partner, this goes according to what is here in the moment. So the question is, how do we live always in accord with the principles of the universe, so that we can always go this way that is presented in the moment? And I'm guessing.
Thank you very much, Olaf. So, okay, so yeah, of course, when you begin to notice, so when your state of mind is freed up a bit, and you've begun to build a little capacity of attention, then you begin to notice stuff in your life, right? Your car, your, how you carry something, how you do your work. And sure, the groceries you buy are going to change probably. That's not a big deal. That's not a big part of it. That's not an important part of it. It's a very, very, very small subcategory that people end up getting lost in and lose the whole meaning of following the way of the universe because they get lost in the form of that. So it's, excuse me, but to be fair, it's also true that people get lost in the form on every other level. So I'm not, just pointing at that. And which brings us to, of course, I want to make it just, about fairy tales. I mean, it's ancient wisdom, isn't it? It's all in there. In fact, if you look at the Bible, let's just think about the New Testament, the four chapters who are written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were written over a period of 100 years. Do you realize that? Over many, many, many years. And so the first one is really down and dirty. And then as you go through, you see it becoming more and more miraculous because over a 100-year period, it had to happen like that. So, but if you look at all that wonderful literature that's in there and just see it as ancient wisdom, it's so beautiful, all by itself, and don't do anything with it. So that is the same way we're to use all form, no matter how brilliant and how ancient or how new fangled. We see through it to the meaning beneath it. There's something about what you're saying that's bothering me a little bit. And it's that, why are you laughing? Did you know that I would be saying this to you? Excuse me. How to live in accord with the principles of the universe. That's what you asked. At the end, you said, well, the question is how to live in accord. Well, by not turning it into something that it isn't, by not making it, that's what I was trying to say about the Bible. Don't make it something that it isn't. Just because we need that, or we feel we require that to be groovy, to be cool, to be in it, to be on it, to be the right kind of student or the right kind of teacher. This is as my life goes on, the more I see, we were talking a little bit about this last time, it's the little things. There aren't any big things. The universe works very intimately with us, moment by moment. There's no mystery. There's no big key to follow. There's just this. Just listen. Just follow Mother Teresa's advice. All we have to do is just listen. And we'll get most of what we need to know. Oh, not all of it, but we'll get enough to keep us busy in our practice if we're just listening. I was a vegetarian in my 3-year retreat, and I really got into it. And I could tell when I ate something that was just not sattvic. You know what I mean by that? Not pure, not kosher. I could tell. And I wrote my teacher a note about it, and he said, today, go out and buy a pound of bacon, cook it, and eat the whole damn thing, and shut up about that, because you're missing the whole point. So that was a horrible shock, because I felt I was finally sensitive enough to get it. So I have to admit that that's what I thought of when you started telling me that. But it's not that I don't respect that. I do understand that, yes, all this stuff starts to happen to us. But we have to be very careful, because our mind is busy grabbing and attaching to things. And we want to kind of let it relax a little more. Okay, aloha. All right, thank you. Next group, please.
Good evening, Sensei.
Hello, Ilaria.
I was in group 2 with McKay Sensei, Sterling Sensei, Jack, and Lucky. And through our discussion, we kind of noticed that we have this standard definition of willpower. And Lucky and I both shared that we've always kind of thought of willpower as self-discipline or the ability to be self-disciplined. But in Aikido, it always seemed like there was a lot more to it, but I never quite understood what that was. And
You're so honest. I love it.
We noticed that there's a standard definition, and it's kind of like my willpower versus your willpower. And McKay Sensei said that the ego is willful. But it seems like Tohei Sensei is taking the word willpower and its definition and extending it to like universal willpower.
Okay. You have more to say? I'll shut up.
Well, I guess I'll just share that McKay Sensei shared that when he's in his ego and being very willful about things, there's discord, but when he surrenders his willfulness to the universe and is in accordance with the universal principles, he experiences like a different kind of willpower, and his efforts become effortless. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's very revealing, of course. Look, willpower. I explain in the training manual about Tohei Sensei's teaching on willpower, which is it's keeping your hands out of the water and allowing it to settle on its own. It's not making the water calm with your hands, because of course that makes it more agitated. The kind of willfulness that the ego produces or ravages our world with is that kind of willpower. It's not willpower, it's willfulness. You know, your will against mine. This is just an ego trip, just a battle. It's just fighting. So when Tohei Sensei talks about willpower, he's talking about the will to surrender, the will to surrender that willfulness, the willpower to allow the universe to have its way with our life and pay attention to that. In other words, instead of looking here, we look here.
Thank you, Sensei. And may I ask a question?
Sure.
This was something I was wondering about from the Shokushu that you read tonight, where it basically said that with willpower can accomplish important tasks. What does Tohei Sensei mean by important tasks?
Well, I mean, I think you can provide your own definition. Look, the way to use our mind, we're talking about mind use, how to use our mind, right? Willpower is how to use willpower, how to use our mind. It's self-revealing. Nobody needs to write principles that tell us how to do it, because ultimately we have to see it for ourselves, because it's self-revealing. And yet, we require endless principles, endless advice, endless support. And the reason for that is that brings us together. If it was just self-revealing, if it was just self-enlightenment, what do we need anybody else for? But we're only a little piece of the universe. We're only a little bit of the whole. So, a great task, accomplishing a great task, an important task, is fulfilling the way of the universal, not the way of the individual. And that can't be done by anyone, by themselves. Okay? Okay. Next group.
Good evening, Sensei and everybody. I was in
Howdy.
group 3 with Joni Jackson Sensei and Andre. And you know what Ilaria said was very, very much a part, I think, of what at least I was trying to think about, and I think what our group was talking about. And your answer was very helpful. But I don't know if I could express this, but we put up in the chat the saying from Toi Sensei, you use your willpower in accord with the universal principles, this will become your reality. And we struggle a little bit with the question of what this means in that sentence that you shared from Toi Sensei. This will become your reality. And one idea brought out was that if just by practicing, by continuing to be steadfast in practice, that changes occur in you, changes develop, and your reality. You said when we started this discussion after our group breakout sessions, your reality will become your practice. But I think our group was trying to say your practice will lead to or become your reality.
Yeah. Okay. So look, this means the thing he says, this will become your reality. This meaning the way you use your mind. And the way you use your mind in this case, he's referring to seeing the universe as your guide. In other words, not judging anything to be incorrect or wrong or out of sorts with the will of the universe. So in other words, you're following the will of the universe, not your own will. The true use of our willpower is surrender. The true use of our willpower is seeing the world for what it is, not surrendering to some being or some God or some not even a principle. That's not what I mean by surrendering. You're offering your attention to this moment. That's what I think of as surrender. Offering my full attention to you rather than thinking about me. Okay, that's basically it. This takes a lot of thinking about, it takes a lot of looking at, it takes a lot of attention. You have to go into it and stay in it, sometimes for hours, maybe sometimes 2 or 3 days. You're still penetrating. What is this? Why does this feel like this? Why do I have this feeling? What is this feeling? You know, the point is to awaken, not to just go on, but to see what is this happening. What's happening to me right now is I should shut up.
Thank you, Sensei.
Next group.
Hello, everybody. I was in a group with Christoph, David Heva, and Charlotta. I have to say, I've really enjoyed what everybody has shared so far. And it was our group, it was very interesting how we were able to share in our own unique way how this principle process works in us, lives in us, you know, our different experiences, right down to its purest form, which is with no words, with no concepts, no, you know, just a beautiful freedom. And I believe we were all able to relate to it. So, you know, we had the full gamut, and really didn't come up with a question, but I think it was just very enjoyable to hear what everybody had to say in their own unique way and their own experience.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. Very beautiful. And also what you say about, you know, not only no words, we really don't require, as I said before, all these principles. We don't require all of this stuff, actually. And maybe sometimes when we're just sitting and resting, maybe listening to someone or sitting in meditation by ourselves, we have an experience where we see, oh, I don't need any of that. But evidently, we return from that because we're constantly asking and looking and seeking and collecting. So we have a very interactive sort of life like that. I really appreciate what you say and what everybody has said. This is, you know, I think every time we have one of these discussions, I think this is my favorite one of all. But I think that every time. So I think the whole process has been so rich. So thanks for everybody. Do we have another group? Was there another group? Gosh.
Yes, Sensei, there is.
I'm group 6. Is that the next? I thought there might be group 5. But anyway, I'll go ahead.
Sally is group 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead, Sally?
Unmute yourself, Sally.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Sensei.
Hi, Sally.
My group was Linda, Joelle, and we had Jack Friend for a while, but we lost him, so, and myself. And one thing that Jack said that struck him about the willpower shokchu was that he was noticing the difference in the naturally arising state of mind silences even the storm and thunder, where before he was thinking it was trying to control it. And so he was saying that that really resonated with him.
Oh, yeah, that's very beautiful.
And Linda said that she felt that willpower was kind of used to overcome negativity or focus on goals and be able to see solutions or what others see, you know, using it in that way. And Joelle related, of course, the willpower to creativity. She says that when she's creating, that's when it feels the most full and powerful for her. It just kind of comes naturally for her then. But she did have a question, and I'll try to say it the way she did, but she said that sometimes she'll see people that she thinks has big willpower, but maybe she's very uncomfortable with what's happening. And so her question was, what universe are they from?
Well, I'd have to hear a lot more specifics to comment on that, but I think that, of course, it could. It's what we've already talked about. There's willpower that Toy Sensei is referring to, which allows great things to happen, universal things to happen.
Yes.
And then there's willfulness, which allows individuals to do great things and get credit for it. So it's up to each one of us to parse out. That's why I was talking to Melly about, the feeling. What I meant was when it's arising and when it's active in us, we can feel whether it's willfulness or surrender, whether it's taking or giving, whether it's receiving or whether it's supporting. But we can feel this in ourselves. And the more we follow the way of the universe, the more that the alarm goes off the minute we start to think about, what does that mean for me? The minute we have that feeling, how could I make this work better? How can I make this more creative, more beautiful, more meaningful? You know what that does? You're an artist. It destroys everything if you start doing that. Artists already know how to surrender because you can't make art without surrendering. I mean, the form has to be there, and the craft. We had a whole class on the difference, on this. But of course, we have to all, and not just, a physical art form, but thinking, the art of thinking, the art of using the mind. That's what Toy Sensei is teaching us. Of course, he's also teaching us the art of moving in relationship to other people and how to unify with them. But it's just a picture. So that what the real value is in us learning to surrender to each other, to love each other, right?
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next group. Phoenix.
Good evening, everyone. We were in group 6, and I was with Jan, Roy, and Tracy. And frankly, to start with, we were confused by what you said. There was a lot packed in there, and so we were just sort of wandering around trying to figure out what just happened for the first few minutes. One of the things I touched on was, and part of it was at least 2 of us in the group haven't experienced Sosho in the dojo, right, or on the meditation mat necessarily, and have not had that experience on the mat. And so comparing the 3 when you don't really know what one of them is kind of hard. What came to mind as I thought about it for myself was that experience or something like that happens. There are times in my life when I rise to the occasion. When there's a connection that is necessary, or there's something is already there. Somebody might need help. Somebody might be ill. There's just something happens, and I'm all there and all in for whatever needs to get done, whatever important thing, whether it's sitting with someone or whatever it is. there's just no question.
Yeah.
And actually, I guess I hardly ever, I never can formulate a question, but I can now, which is how being on the mat and with each other is like this giant invitation saying, try this now. But I don't know. I still, I think it's because unlike the situation I was just talking about I'm grasping. And in the grasping, of course, it's not there. Roy said something similar to this, which is that he is familiar with this, but the way he gets most familiar is when he's being tested, and particularly, say, by you. That he, Gaisho and Gyosho, that he can do that easily, but going to Sosho happens best when you're right with him. He's having that experience, and then what he said is doubt. He ends up, the feeling when he's in that state is he doesn't have doubt. And Roy, correct me if I didn't quite get that correct.
Yeah. No, I see this in Roy, so I think that you got that correctly. I have to say, well, first of all, as Lynn pointed out, how much she enjoys listening, to everybody. And you said, well, we started out like really confused. So you part of that is because there's two parts to this evening. I make a case and throw it out there. And if you haven't been in where I have been for the last few days, then it's not going to be. You're going to have to go, wait, let me get in there. What's he talking about? What? How does that work? But when you have the discussion and then you listen to everybody ask and the response, that, as you can attest, clarifies. That's what those things, that's why we have that, because that clarifies everything. Number one. Number two, yeah, well, you jump to it and are 100% in it because you're spontaneously required to be. When you look on the mat, when you're on the mat and you think, oh, this is an invitation, it's totally self-conscious. There's no spontaneity. So there's no way you can do that when you're like that. But if I come to you, so then all bets are off. And then you kind of have a little spontaneous experience. Right? That's what Roy's talking about. Not just me, but I mean, the circumstance calls you to forget that. Forget yourself for a moment. Come on, what's going on? Look at me right here. When we have that, then all of us are zip right here. So you can do that for yourself by learning to listen to others instead of yourself. Before you step on the mat, well, I always ask people to come early to the dojo. So I want them to come sit on the mat. People talk and people stretch and people do all kinds of stuff. They're not using the time. I want you to come sit and listen. So, in other words, come in from the outside. You may have had a crazy day. Just sit down and change your state of mind. Turn about in the deepest seat of consciousness. Awaken to where you are, what you're doing, and what the opportunity really is, not to perfect yourself, but to help others perfect themselves.
Thank you, Sensei, very much.
Okay.
Sensei, could I ask you something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, when you said the universe makes everything happen, that kind of tripped me up because, like in the United States, we've been having a lot of disharmony and chaos and violence. So it was like a bunch of willful individuals created an insurrection because, and yet, you know, is that the universe making that happen?
Of course. Are you kidding?
Well,
What do you think it is? The devil? I mean, what could it be? We've only got this, man. So the question is, why? Not some political answer or social answer or psychological answer. Why do I need to see that? See, but that's, of course, the universe would like everyone in the United States to ask that question, not just you and me, but you and I at least can. We have the freedom, we have the insight, we have the training, we have the option C. We have option C. We know what that is. That's option A. We know that. And I even saw people that day doing option B, standing back and letting everybody else take care of it for them. But I didn't see any option C at all.
No.
So that's my job, to see it with that connection, not to see it with option A or so what B, but to see it, to connect. So it's a tremendous invitation by the universe.
Yeah.
You know,
I think option C was being used by the man who guided them away from people that they were looking for. He was really doing Aikido. Yeah.
He was doing Aikido. I agree.
Yeah.
I saw that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I just remember, following the way of the universe means nothing is wrong, no matter what it is. It's to be paid attention to with respect and honor. That's what they're not doing. But that doesn't mean we don't do that. Can you kind of see that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Domo arigatou gozaimasu. I'm going to go now. Bye-bye.